This week on Windows on the World, we're going to talk to John Timon from Football Against Apartheid.
40 years ago, South Africa was expelled from FIFA. FIFA expelled them on the 16th of July 1976. Do you think it would be any benefit if we expel apartheid Israel from FIFA?
Sounds like a good idea to me. It would be consistent with what happened 40 years ago. And this is fantastic, actually, because this is a way of getting the message across in a different way to thousands of people. So I'm very happy to support you.
I'm here today because I think we have to expel Israel from FIFA. I think what's been going on, children are dying, rights are being violated, and the world just looks away. I have no idea why it looks away, and I think just like from little seeds grow great big oak trees, from this little seed there'll be a big oak tree, but Israel is eventually expelled from FIFA. It's been done before.
Yes, it has.
South Africa.
It's a very brave project, this. When did it get started?
Well, we're officially going about 18 months. We organised ourselves, shall I say, on the 1st of September 2014, and we're going sort of steady since that. But this little banner was on the go for about 6 months before that, as a sort of tester to see how to go, see how people respond to it. And then we got somebody from Spurs, Tottenham Hotspurs, Andrew George, who joined me. And we launched ourselves onto the pathways, I'd say, at our first football match, and it's the 4th of January 2014. So we've surpassed ourselves, our expectations, because now we've got something like 40 or 50 fans groups throughout the country and Europe, yeah.
Well, that's really good. So what made you think this was an idea that would work, getting it into football fans?
Oh, we didn't know whether it's going to work. Sometimes you've got to try things. And if you think that the situation is appalling and it must change, and we were successful actually expelling South Africa from football, you know, and that happened in 1976, so coming up to the 40th anniversary of that. And that was the catalyst, that was the beginning of the end of apartheid South Africa. So I thought, well, I mean, it's worth a try. So we tried it this way. And the visual of this, I think, is what proved to be really effective and captured the imagination of fans. There's so much rivalry in football, you know, it's a great place to do anything, really. And we hit upon the idea with our Arsenal and Spurs of the two teams together. And the rivalry of fans were going to the match, you know, all expected one of their teams to win and so on. And then to see the two banners side by side, it makes them stop and think, you know. And now the fans just want to be pictured in front of them. I mean, it's really, really popular amongst football fans.
It's a very good idea and a very good way of bringing people together to think about this. And of course, you're not pointing directly at Israel, so you won't get targeted by people straight away, so you can kind of ease them into the subject of what they think of Palestine.
That's right, because they have to think about apartheid, what is apartheid, and then they must ask themselves, where is apartheid these days, and come to their own conclusions, yes, so that's subtle, yes, quite right.
Are you a sort of lifelong Arsenal fan then?
I'm a lifelong Arsenal fan, that's right, yes. When I came from Ireland in 1967, I lived around the corner from Highbury, and that became my local club, and I think people should support their local club, and that was it, ever since that, you know. And we've come through quite a bit. We've had some ups and downs at Arsenal, and ups and downs in football and so on. And that time when I came in 67, there was terrible racism here in London, but of a different kind. It was anti-Irish racism.
Right.
And when I went out to buy my cigarettes, or buy my newspaper, my evening news as it was in those days, you know, and you go to the local news agents, you see the little notices on the windows, you know, no dogs are Irish allowed, room to let, no dogs are Irish allowed, you know. And it was startling. I mean, that was a shocking thing to see, you know. And we defeated that. And then after that came more racism, anti-Semitism with the National Front, and all of that sort of stuff came. And we defeated that. And that was desecration of graves and so on and so forth. And then came the discrimination against Pakistanis and the Paki bashing. And we defeated that. And then came the sus laws, the black people, and we defeated that. And then there came Irish Ireland again, because the troubles in Northern Ireland. And the news media was announcing, if you see an Irishman, well dressed in a suit and quietly going about his business, it's suspicious. This man could be dangerous. He could be asleep in Irema. So started again. So we've had all sorts of racisms over the years, and we're back again. Then, of course, Islamophobia and the attacks on the mosques and so on and so forth. And we are proud to say that football against apartheid is at the forefront of all of them. Yeah.
It's a great idea to bring people together, but you've just gone over a lot of the divide and rule strategies that have been played out over the years, and younger people probably won't know about all those, but it's the same old idea, isn't it?
It is.
The same process.
Yes.
It's been going on a long time of divide and rule.
Yes.
And basically, to use a football term, it's misdirection and keeps your eye off the ball.
Exactly, that's right, yes. But I think that the greatest divider of all time is religion. They can always count on religion to be divided. In Ireland, where I came from, Catholics and Protestants, who had lived happily for years and so on. And then, of course, South Africa, we had the coloured racism. In America, the segregation, black and white. But now again we're turned to the religious stuff in the Middle East and Islamophobia and the Wahhabis and Salafis and things like that, doing the dirty work for what I consider the ruling class. Yeah,
absolutely.
So,
That's absolutely what it is. And to actually get this out to a very wide audience, which you've got the potential to do, I think is very, very powerful. How much have you seen change since you started doing this?
Well, I've seen a remarkable change, about turn. Really about turn. We went to the toughest clubs first of all to see how we get on, and the Arsenal Spurs, that is a real challenge because the rivalry is very strong and football fans are going there to pump the other side. You really want the other side to lose, much on your own side to win. And when the rivalry is really bad, you certainly don't want your rivals, main rivals, to win. And they went to Chelsea and so on. Again, it was sort of, you could feel the heat amongst football fans. But as we get along with that, the more fans have got used to it and they're getting to like us. And now they actually call us by our first names, they want to talk to us and so on, and want to interview us and so on, yes. So, but that is sort of in England. And Belgium and France are similar, yeah. Scotland are absolutely all over us, particularly the Celtic fans and that sort of people. Wales as well, Swansea and Cardiff. So we get a great reception everywhere we go. Actually, the country completely different to what we expected. We expected the very first time that Andrew George and I did the one at Arsenal for Arsenal Spurs, we expected at least we're going to get shouted at least one punch. we were scared actually that particular night. We were. And that particular night, there was a video person there to make a video of Mahmoud Sarsak, who has a Palestinian prisoner, footballer, who was arrested in Israel when he was going from one club to another in Palestine. And he was arrested by the occupation forces, and he was jailed without charge. For 3 years he was held without charge. He didn't know why he was in there. And eventually it was a football campaign that got going, and the campaign for him. And eventually he went on hunger strike. And after 90 days on hunger strike, Sepp Blatter, for all his sins that he might have done otherwise, he actually got Mahmoud Sarsak out of prison. So he was there that night. And there was this French crew were there to make a film of him, and so they caught us on film. So I'll send that to you sometime, yeah.
Well, it's very, very interesting to me, this, because you're approaching it, as I said earlier, from a very clever angle.
Yes.
Have you had any coverage in the mainstream media?
Well, no. I mean, the mainstream media is only going to cover this when we win. It's the same situation as South Africa, I mean, the mainstream media never wanted to mention the apartheid campaign or give any publicity to us whatsoever. But when we expelled South Africa on the 16th of July 1976, it was that the cat is out of the bag. I mean, it was massive news. And it was the catalyst, it was the thing that started the collapse of apartheid in South Africa. And of course, football is one of the very few organisations organised in every corner of the globe. There's no other organisation, business, anything that's organised as well as football throughout the whole globe. And so that news got around to everybody, the children at school, secondary schools, universities, businesses, everybody was caught up in it. And so it began the collapse of apartheid. So it was always a good move for us. I mean, we do expect, even though they've changed the rules at FIFA, we do expect that we will expel apartheidism from football. If not in the 2018 World Cup in Moscow, sometime shortly afterwards. The momentum is there and it's building. And I think it'll be very difficult to halt now, because get into the social media and people are tweeting, retweeting, and Facebook and so on and so on. So sometimes these things get their own momentum, and I think it's got the sort of momentum now. We've got people in Australia interested, South Africa, Brazil, not to mention most European countries and most Asian countries, they're getting to know about it. And so that's going to move on, so we expect that it will become a big campaign very, very shortly.
It's very interesting actually, because the way, the reason I mentioned the mainstream media is in the way that they present Israel.
Yes.
Which is totally contrary to what a lot of people now think of it. So do you find that most people are on the side of the Palestinians now?
Oh, no. Well, but ordinary people, yes. Ordinary people, yes, are overwhelmingly on the side. That's right. And I think recent interviews or polls in America have showed that 33.3, that's 1/3 of Americans, are on the side of Palestine. And that's without any campaign very much, at all. There's a BDS campaign over there, but it's mostly Jewish people, the Jewish community in America. Actually, there's something that I must say there, the best people and most important people around our campaign, both football campaign, BDS campaign, and all of the campaigns against Israeli apartheid, are Jewish people. And they are really, really upset that the Zionist government in Israel should assume that Jewish people around the world should be loyal to their extremism. And that's upsetting them so very, very, very much. In America and here as well. Here the support for Palestine is probably greater. That's in Great Britain. It's probably better. It's about 40%. That's according to these recent polls, yeah.
Well, that's very interesting, because what you're having with what we'd call the Zionist movement is it's a group whose interests are rather different from a lot of those other people who would be in the larger group of Judaism.
Yes.
But what I was trying to get to was, often when these subjects are brought up, especially Palestine, you find that you get a lot of ordinary Jews are kind of in favour of the Palestinians, yet when it comes down to a wider Zionist agenda, they generally side with it. Have you got any thoughts on that?
I mean, like I said, we would go to the matches, the people who are interested and recognise apartheid are the Jewish community, the Jewish football fans, and they come up to us. You get the odd one that doesn't understand. I think it's more ignorant than the other. But when I tell him that about Michael Peled, who wrote this book, The General's Son, who's the son of the greatest general that's ever served Israel, and he's actually served in the army, and he will admit to have actually shooting and killing Palestinians, who he thought for whatever reason he thought were terrorists presumably. And when he was serving in the Israeli army, and then he served in the special service and he did extra time. Now he's on our side, and he goes to Israel, to Palestine, wherever, occupied Palestine, and he says, I want to go there. And the occupation force said, no. He said, if you go there, you're arrested. And so Michael Peled will go there and get arrested and face the courts and all the rest the same as everybody else. Now he is probably the most famous Palestinian or Israeli of all, I'd imagine, because of his father. His father was probably the most famous general who was involved in all of those early wars and the defeats of the Arab states and so on. So he's very, very famous, and the general's son, that's Michael Peled, is very, very famous. Then there's Ilan Pappé, who was also Jewish, and he's written a book, the ethnic cleansing of Palestine. So when I meet these people who are hostile, maybe, or a little bit hostile, and do ask about it, I said, look, I'm only doing what my Jewish comrades and friends are advising we should do, and we're supporting them, they're supporting us for very good reasons, that they are being pulled down by an Israeli government who claims to be fighting for Jews, but that is not the case. I mean, an awful lot of these Jewish people I know, and supporters of Palestine, support of humanity and freedom, great people, they're the people that are really upset that this Zionist government, as a part of that Zionist government, is pulling them down, is ruining their good name. That they spent centuries fighting for justice, you know. There's no people on earth that's fought for justice like the Jewish people have, you know. They fought wars, they fought for justice and peace everywhere. The religion's about that, you know.
Well, there's many sides to what we're talking about. We're going to take a short break and we'll see you in a couple of minutes. Welcome back to Windows on the World. I'm talking to John Timon, whose organisation is called Football Against Apartheid. Welcome back, John.
Thank you, Mark. Yeah, good to be here.
Well, it's good to be anywhere, isn't it?
It is. And a day like this, better be inside than outside anyway, yeah.
But it's very, very, very interesting what you're doing, and we've talked a little bit about the background of it,
Yeah.
and how it's kind of spreading out, and how the mainstream media kind of
Yes.
ignores
Yes.
what's happening in Israel, really, or
Yeah.
kind of promotes one side.
Yes, of course, yes. Well, that's true. I mean, if you're to ask somebody from, if the media, so let's put it this way, if the Israeli media were to come and ask me and I would say something, they'll switch that round to sort of make my thing sound like it was pro-Israeli, you know, whereas it's not necessarily pro-Israeli, you know. I mean, we are not against Israeli people or against Palestinian people, or against anybody. We're against the ideology of apartheid, and that's really as simple as that, you know. And I mean, I grew up actually reading Anne Frank as a child. I was reading about Eichmann, when the trials of Eichmann and so on, and my sympathies were all with Israel. In that sense, I'd be the same as Michael Peled and Ilan Pappé and all those people, and loads, I'm sure, millions and millions of people around about the world who were sympathetic to Jewish people because of what happened in the Holocaust and so on. So that's where I grew up, and I was associating myself very much with Israel, and I even sent my daughter actually to one of those camps in Israel. I've forgotten what they used to call them now. Kibbutz, that's right. Yeah. Kibbutznik, that's right. Yeah, and I was sort of proud of that as well, you know. And then I found out what the Israeli regime was doing to the Palestinian people. And how that has now, and the publicity around that, has got the masses of Israeli people actually thinking that the Palestinians are very bad people. And of course, they have never been crossed into Palestine. Most Israelis, nearly all Israelis, are only to serve as the army. In the army, and there's killing people, arresting people. You can see every day on the social media. Now, the mass media never actually shows that side of Israel at all. What the occupation forces are up to in Israel. So most Israeli people don't have an idea at all what's going on, and most British people either, because they don't. The press here don't even touch what we're doing. They will never cover what I'm doing. Not until I'm very close to it. We're close to victory, you know. Then they'll jump on our bandwagon and they'll say, they'll all want an interview and they'll all want a piece of you then at that stage. The same as South Africa. They want a piece of the victories and how did you do this and why and so on and so forth, you know. And everybody was claiming then to be part of the battle, you know. But at this moment in time, we're few in number. Our activists are few in number at the moment in time.
Well, at least you're waking people up. And
yes.
This is one thing I wanted to bring out about Israeli propaganda, is that they always portray themselves as the victims. So you've got a big upward struggle there.
Yes.
But what I thought was very interesting about what you were saying in the first part of the show was that there's a general feeling amongst the public that an awareness that is propaganda.
Well, that is
That's
correct.
what
yeah.
you're actually finding that.
That,
people
yes,
are
yes,
expressing
yes.
that.
That's right. I mean, if I wear this shirt home on the train, the tube, many people will either give me the thumbs up or come and plonk themselves and say, "I like your shirt," or wait until I'm getting off the train, say, "I like your shirt. Where can I get one of these?" and so on and so forth. So it is. There is a lot of popular support for Palestine and Palestinian people and the suffering of it, and that's probably through the social media. It must be through the social media because they're not reading about it in the Murdoch's papers, that's for sure, or the Guardian, or maybe to some degree in the Guardian, but certainly not the Telegraph or the Express or even News or even Standard. So they must be getting it from social media, yeah.
There's a
And
wide,
us.
wider view of this of
Yes.
who actually owns the media, and when
Yes.
we find out who owns the media, we realise
Well,
why
that's right.
Israel
Yes,
is
yes,
always
yes.
obviously
Exactly. That's right. Yeah,
made
yeah.
to look
Yes.
like they say it's the only democracy in the Middle East. Have you seen that propaganda?
I have seen that propaganda, and I used to counter that as well as saying they used to call themselves the only democratic elected government in the Middle East.
Yes.
And I used to counter that, I would say that they behave like the democratic elected government of Eastern or Middle Central Europe in the 1930s. And of course, without naming any particular government, everybody would think instantly who's the only government in the 1930s who was as brutal as the apartheid regime, yeah? Using racism as a tool and so on and so forth, so quite racist. And in that sense, there's an awful lot of upsetness and amongst the Jewish community to be labelled with that label, to be even thinking even remotely or in the second hand being associated with what happened in Central Europe in the 1930s. The appalling
Again,
things that
a big
happened
propaganda
there.
exercise has gone on there where we have to think of these people as perpetual victims, which is very much the opposite of if you go to Israel, you see that the victims are not who we're told the victims really are.
Well, that's right. Yes, and the racism is more blatant there as well against black people, against black Jews.
Jews, the
yes.
Ethiopian Jews, yeah.
I mean, that is the appalling thing there. So it's not a question of being for or against Jewish people or fighting for the Jewish people. They're not. They're fighting for the separated state and the power of the extreme right wing. I mean, the Netanyahu, in my view, is as extreme as any government in the world at this moment in time. All right, you might say the Ukraine or something similar to that. Very racist and very brutal.
I think this is the most important thing because Netanyahu and these ultra-Zionists who actually are in charge of an awful lot of what we see in here are basically racial supremacists. But the very interesting thing about this is that they're not really a race. Are they a belief, a race, or a religion? And if you talk to people who are ultra-Zionists, they can't really tell you because it's more of an ideology. It's an ideology that
that's right.
to me is based on a false premise.
Yes.
What do you think of that?
Well, it is a political ideology, isn't it? I mean, and I suppose that people with a certain amount of power thought themselves that if they got together, they could do their own thing. But Ilan Pappy actually touches on this when he's talking about the ethnic cleansing of Palestine. You get rid of all the Palestinians, and because they're unclean, and then you get rid of the next one. And then what they'll probably have to look at some Jewish people that are 3/4 or only 1/8 or 2/8 Jewish or 3/8 Jewish. And where is this thing going to end, And that does take you back to Central Europe and the sort of, I would say, looking at people's genes and so on, because the thing about it is, I think what he was saying, and he knows better than me because he's been and studied the Jewish background and studied these people who are coming into Israel, claiming to be Jews and so on and so forth. But they're people who converted. And some of them might not have converted, and some of them are not religious at all, and so on and so forth. So what part of them is Jewish? This is the question they are asking. I'm not asking those questions because if they say to me they're Jewish, I believe it. If I say to you I'm Irish, you can believe it or not. It doesn't matter to me. And you're English. It doesn't matter to me what people are, But to racists it's important how black you are, how foreign you are, how different you are. And it's that difference they look for, in people. And that's what Zionists look for. They look for differences to sort of hate and bring hatred to people and division. And like you said at the beginning, it's a question of dividing people away from the ruling class, or bringing richer people closer and closer and closer to the Zionism, and they're distancing themselves from other genuine Jewish people who are in for fairness, and what they've always done. I mean, Jewish people, to my knowledge, have always been fighting for fairness and equality that I know of anyway.
I think with this sort of stuff, you have to isolate the issue. What's it really about?
Yes.
And I think you've very cleverly done that, because by focusing on it on apartheid,
Yes.
which is actually the issue,
Yes, it is.
then
Yeah.
you get rid of all the nonsense that's talked around it.
Yeah. I mean, people have sometimes you might have a little bit of racial thought probably gets into all of our brains. To be honest about it, from time to time and time, you know, you might see somebody being abusive, and you probably have a go at their race or their origin or some other thing, you know. But I mean, you can't have a society of thought police, and that is where apartheid is leading to. I mean, if they do get rid and cleanse the state of Palestine, of all Palestinian people, then what do you do if people are half Palestine, half Jewish, you know? I mean, this is the crisis. This is what it's going to lead to. This is what apartheid has to lead to eventually, you know. Divisions of people, you know, on the basis of now it is probably religion, maybe race, religion, but where's the next division going to come from if they keep on dividing people? And that is why we are set us up against apartheid and that division of people, you know. Apartheid is probably the worst manifestation of racism of all, I think, of demanding people live apart. And in Israel now, there people can't get married if or can't live together if they do get married, you know. If they get married abroad, they cannot live together and so on. I mean, this is very, very dangerous, you know. This is the worst aspect, and it probably couldn't even get worse than that, you know.
A lot of these people who are behind it, basically the Zionist plan, if we can call it that, which I think is a good term for it, are actually sort of destroying a lot of other people through what's called diversity, which is so ironic.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, I mean, I suppose in a sense, in one way, the Israeli state is diverse, and that it's got Jewish people from America and England and France and so on going back. But I think not anymore, and a lot of people who did go there. From Russia, from America, and so on, are now going back to their countries. Now going back from America, and back to France, and back to England, and so on and so forth. And the population is standing still. I mean, they're expecting to expand. It's only a small country of 5 or 6 million people. And if it carries on like this, you know, all the best brains want to leave, want to get out of it. They don't want to be associated with this hatred and this division and this apartheid, you know. They're intelligent people, and they're reading the books, and they're going to libraries, and they're studying and so on. Not like the sort of more ignorant people, you know. So the best people are going abroad again, going back to France and Spain. Actually, I read something recently where the outflux of people is going to Berlin, of all places. Now, I never thought I'd see that happening, you know, that all of these people leaving Israel and going to settle in Berlin. But that was their bright people. There was university professors, students, researchers, and that sort of people, yeah.
Yeah, it's the thing is with Israel originally was set up with mainly, I think, Russian illegal immigrants. There was a lot of illegal immigration there.
That's right.
And of course, there was huge incentives for people to move.
That's right. Yes,
Germany
yes.
paid out a lot of money. Obviously,
That's right.
the Rothschilds were bankrolling it.
That's right.
And
yeah.
a lot of the money came from Britain.
Well, that's right. Lady, oh God, it'll come to me, Porter. Lady Jane Porter, yes.
Yeah.
Now, she's the woman, actually, who started the ethnic cleansing, or the social cleansing of housing in Kensington, if you remember. That's a few years ago now. And she, well, I'll tell you first of all what she did to merit the tab as the originator of the social cleansing of housing. She became leader of the council, in Westminster Council, and she wanted to make sure that the Labour would never get control of that council again. So what she did was she sold off all the social housing. The social housing was meant for teachers and doctors and nurses and other essential services in London, and they had little hostel accommodation and so on. But they had a tendency to vote Labour, so she sold them all out, demolished the place and built private housing so the people coming in are Tory voters, you know. And she was caught doing it. Called the ethnic cleansing, the social cleansing of Kensington, and she was taken to court and she was fined something like £5 million. Well, so she skedaddled, didn't she? And she escaped. Where do you think she went to? To Israel. Now, she was the inheritor of the Tesco empire, yeah? So she went on loads and loads of money, went and she bought herself a place in a settlement in Palestine, Israel, yeah? So that is what she did. And that is what loads and loads of other millionaires have done as well. They went and bought up these things and became the early settlers and the very, very rich settlers and so on, you know. So it's only going to be a matter of time when these people, when they're seeking profits as well from whatever investments to make there, that they're going to come into conflict with their working classes amongst the Israelis, amongst the Israeli population. And so if they get rid of all the Palestinians, they're going to now have a class fight with Jewish people who've gone over there to how to build the state of Israel. And now they're going to find themselves exploited by Lady Porter and people like her ilk, you know.
That's a really good point to make,
Yeah.
because we've been covering the social cleansing, which is now
Yes.
a massive issue.
It is,
That was
yes,
a very
yes.
good point that you
Yes,
brought
yes,
historically
yes,
there,
yes,
because
yes.
that was
Yeah.
something that I think many people have forgotten.
Yes.
But we're going through something very similar now, but
Yes.
on a bigger scale. The corruption is now not just one or two people; it seems to be every council in the country.
Yes.
With the housing, which we've covered. So I think that's
Yes, the social cleansing of the inner city areas, I think, is what's going on. Yeah,
Yes.
the one that's like, I think the experiment might be in Iraq with the green area, the green secure area. You know, where they think the rich can live in there secure, away from working class and so on, and spend all their millions to go from one city to another and so on. But they got to get food, they got to get support services, and they don't mind now that the working classes have got to go leave central London and go and live on the outside. But that can't go on forever. They're going to soon, eventually, need to eat and drink and have their cars maintained, their houses maintained or built, and so on and so forth. So they're going to need us more than we need them. That's for sure. Working class don't need that ruling class. We don't need them. We're self-sufficient. We've got our trades. We've got our ability to make and grow what we need to eat and drink and so on and so forth, and play our music and all the rest of it. The ruling class don't come up with anything of those things. So they've got no engineers, got no intellectuals, no writers, no people with any skills. So they will actually, if they do live in their green area, safe and sound, they're going to have nothing to support services.
That's absolutely true, and that's a really good place to leave it for this section, because you've just summed up what is most important is that this so-called elite and what's happening in London, which is it's a kind of it's a social cleansing.
It is,
of everybody who can actually do the work that's needed in the city.
Yes.
So what I think they want is to get everybody who's a kind of worker.
Yes.
To be bussed in and out every day, but when
That's
they're going
right.
beyond the M25, that's going to be a little bit difficult, isn't it?
Well, I mean, they've got the technology in place, haven't they, for the congestion charge, for example, yeah. So some people are licensed to come in, and some people are stopped, and that is it. The gates won't open for you if you're working class, unless of course you've got a permit from your boss or something to open the gates for you. Otherwise, you don't get into London. So we're going back centuries. I mean, they're driving humanity backwards, you know, in an awful lot of ways, you know. The same with football, when they've taken over our football teams, and they won't invest the players because they want profits out of our game. So we used to go play football and go and watch others playing football, admire good players and local team fellas made good and so on. Nowadays, it's big money, massive money that's coming into it. And the new coach at my team here, he's got to get paid £10 million a year. Can you imagine all the houses you can buy for that? All the fans that are going to probably not able to buy a single house, and one manager can get paid £10 million a year. That'll buy what? 10, 15 flats.
Well, it is ridiculous, but I think this is part of the divide and rule strategy.
Yeah.
Because they're making these people into sort of superheroes and gods.
Yes, that's right.
And they're removing them from the public. Whereas this football used to be a game for everybody, really.
It was a game for everybody. It was a game for everybody, but that's something we want to do again. You know that, there's a great example again of Wimbledon, who the billionaires want to make more money, and they ship their team out to Milton Keynes, and they called that Milton Keynes Dons, where it used to be called the Dons. And the local fans said to us, "Oh, this is outrageous." But somebody said, "Yes, but let's make this positive. Let's do something really positive here." And so they set up AFC Wimbledon, that's Amateur Football Club of Wimbledon, and the fans just start to play themselves in the same name as the club, and they got promoted to the league, and they got promoted to another league, and they got promoted. And now, yesterday, on Sunday, the amateur side, the amateur team, surpassed or equalled the other one. They're now in the same league. The rich ones didn't put enough money into it after getting the club, and the poor ones, the fans, have actually gone up to it, and now we're going to face them twice this season. So the outcome of that's going to be really interesting. This is the fans against the millionaires, is why I put it. You know, the working class against the ruling class. You know, so it's a class conflict manifesting itself in football. Yeah.
Well, I think people taking their power back.
Yes.
And getting it amongst themselves again is very important.
Yes, that's right.
Thanks very much, John.
You're welcome.
And
nice to be
keep
here.
up the good work. And will you come back and give us some updates in the future?
Yes, absolutely. Love to. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Thanks for watching Windows on the World. Remember, keep watching those, watching us, watching Windows on the World, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks to Windows on the World.